The cluttered hold rumbled and rattled in time, with the pulsing engines located nearby. A light strip flickered into life with an erratic buzzing, shedding a yellow glow across the stacked crates and metal boxes. Oriole strode through the open doorway, glancing back into the corridor briefly before closing the door. He walked quickly through the maze of piled cargo before entering a more open space near the center of the hold. Why? What? Where are you? He asked, his voice low. I am in prayer, Inquisitor, a deep voice rumbled from the back of the gloom. This may be my last chance to talk to you. Come out where I can see you, he told the hidden figure. Have you no respect for my traditions, Inquisitor? The deep voice answered. You have done little else but pray on this journey, Dionysus. I am sure the Emperor will forgive this short interruption. Oriole responded evenly, sitting down on a smaller carton. A tall, broad figure emerged from the shadows, swathed in an armless, open-fronted robe, a hooded cowl over his face. The man was very large and towered over the Inquisitor. His exposed arms and shoulders were corded with thick muscle, rope-like veins pulsing beneath his deeply tanned skin. Across his expansive chest, muscles were numerous, scar lines which cut across an ornate tattoo of a double-headed eagle with its wings spread. The face inside the cowl was similarly broad and square-jawed, the lips set in a hard line. What else have you to tell me, Inquisitor? The man asked, no hint of difference in his voice. We are underway again, heading for Astau, and the final stage of the mission, Oriole told him, looking at the giant. This much I have already observed, Inquisitor, he answered curtly. I thought you would have, Oriole replied quietly. I want to check one last time that everything is understood. Rest at ease, Inquisitor, Dionysus told Oriole, crossing his thick arms across his chest. I know that I am to act only when called upon by you. I know that I am to remain covert until that time, or until we return to the Emperor's realms if my prowess is not needed. I also know that it is a dangerous game you play, and more likely than not, I will be called upon to fight. I understand this is not the dignified and glorious methods of battle you are familiar with, and I thank you for your patience, Dionysus, Oriole said smoothly. You understand why I wish it to be this way. I understood that well when I swore my oaths of obedience, acknowledged Dionysus. I will start my battle prayers and the rites of honor. I shall also pray for you, Inquisitor, that you do not have need of me, even as I pray for the battle I have been born to fight. Pray for all of us, Dionysus, Oriole whispered, turning his gaze away. Pray for us all. Looking out of the shuttle window, as we descend towards Astau, I see that the planet is mostly desert. Ochre-colored sands stretch as far as the eye can see once we're below the cloud layer. I see a blob of buildings far below us, and guess that that must be where we're heading. But it's still indistinct when the colonel calls over the internal comm for us to unstrap and get our kit together. I cast one last glance out of the opposite port, wondering if this will be the last world I'll ever see. Our reception on Astau is certainly not as ceremonial as the one on Malik, but no less military. That's to be expected, since we're now just another band of Imperial renegade mercenaries to them, rather than visiting officials. Fire warriors are everywhere, carrying their carbines and rifles, and obviously not just for show. These ones wear a dark blue and gray camouflaged uniform, with red identification markings on their chests. Sarcassa is a night world, Schaefer murmurs as we pass by a squad. They are obviously ready to depart. Indeed, several Tau crafts sit on the landing apron, squads of fire warriors marching on board. I see three of the tanks, hammerheads the colonel calls them, gliding slowly to a massive transport ship. The Tau don't seem to pay us any more attention than anyone else around, so obviously our first appearances are convincing. We're dressed in a ragtag collection of old uniforms, armed with a variety of different weapons. I've got an autogun and an old revolver. Tanya has her sniper rifle. Oriel and the colonel carry stub pistols and chain swords, while the rest of us have las guns. We've got an assortment of other bits and pieces, like a few frag and smoke grenades, plus Tross has a pack full of demolitions charges and fuses. A Tau warrior sees us and holds up a hand to stop us. Warriors? He asks, face hidden behind the viewing lenses of his helm, his strangely accented voice emitting through a hidden speaker. Yes, Oriel replies. Is there a problem, Shasfrey? All warriors checked, the Shas fighter replies, pointing to a temporarily looking dome beside the main spaceport complex. We have to go there? The colonel asks, looking out towards the checking center. Yes, all warriors checked, the Shasfrey repeats, more angrily this time, thrusting his finger towards the building. All right, we're going, Oriel placates him, giving us the nod to change course. What's going on? I ask the colonel as we make our way across the black surface landing pad. I am not sure, he replies, glancing around at the fire warriors in the area. Maybe Brightsword has got wind of something. I do not know. As we make our way to the building the fire warriors indicated, I can see another group entering in front of us. The mercenaries are a mix of races, mostly humans, but with a couple of lanky, blue-skinned creatures with high crests over their heads and ridges down the center of their faces. Inside the building is fairly open, with just a couple of archways to other rooms and a single door on the opposite side. Oriel tells us to wait and makes his way over to a small table to one side, beside which is set a Tau. Judging from the build and robes, I'd say he was watercast, an observation which is proved correct when he pulls a sheet of transparent sheets from a bag beside the table and begins writing. He talks to the other sellswords, first for a few minutes, before directing them into the one side of the rooms, and then turns his attention to Oriel, who speaks at some length to him. The pair of them occasionally looking over in our direction. I fidget nervously as we wait, keeping my gaze on the floor, trying not to catch the eye of the fire warriors passing through and stationed in the archways. I guess we're signing on for Brightsword's army. I hope Oriel's cover story is good, and that Coldwind has helped us out behind the scenes. I can't imagine Brightsword being too trusting at the moment. After all, he's about to launch a major invasion, and he must have some idea that not everyone in the Tau Empire is giving him their full support. I snap out of my thoughts when Oriel comes back to us. We've just joined up, he tells me with a grim smile. Coldwind's references smooth the whole thing admirably. We should get out of here, though, and keep a low profile. As we turn to the exit, we see three smaller figures standing close to the doorway. What the hell is this? Growls Trost uneasily. Psychers, Oriel replies quietly, teeth gritted. Stay calm, we'll be fine. As we get closer, I see the figures are small aliens, nearly naked but for short skirts, gray-skinned, with wide yellow eyes, and completely devoid of hair. They look at us as we approach. I eye them back evilly. Think of something simple, something easy to remember, I hear Oriel say. Like an old nursery rhyme, or a gun drill, or a marching chant. Repeat that in your head. Just keep thinking it over and over again. As we pass between the aliens, my skin crawls. I probably imagine it, but I swear I can feel something poking around in my head, like clawed hands, turning my mind over and having a look. The sickening feeling carries on. Don't think about them. It will make it easier for them to read your mind, warns Oriole. I try to remember the house anthem, but get only partway through the third verse, so I start again. That's when events catch up with me, and I have to try hard not to stop dead in my tracks. It sounded just like Oriole was whispering in my ear, both times he spoke. But he's at least 5 paces ahead of me, in front of the others. He's a Thomist, just like those aliens. Keep singing that anthem, Cage, Oriole's mind voice tells me. I'll explain later. Just don't think about me. I have to put all my thoughts of Oriole and Psychers from my mind and go over the lasgun maintenance drill I was taught back when I joined. I used to pass hours going over that drill when I was in prison. I reckon I could do that with my eyes closed even now. As I pass through the doorway, I try hard not to glance over my shoulder. Just ahead, Trots growls at one of the aliens, making him flinch, bringing a wolfish smile to his face. Gone is the cold blooded mass murderer now. I think he enjoys it more than he's ever done. I'm not sure which one I find scarier. Once we're outside, I see the city is much less developed than the Malay capital. There are no sky roads, no soaring towers, just many low domes and spheres, all in a very regular radial pattern around the spaceport. Planned by a more military mind is my first impression. Oriole leads us through the road outside the Starship terminal, taking us toward one of the boulevards stretching outwards from the central hub created by the spaceport. None of us say anything as we walk for a couple of minutes, all of us wary of the mind reading aliens we've just left behind. Okay, we're far enough away now, Oriole tells us, glancing around to make sure there are no Tau close by. He stops at a junction with one of the radical roads, by, by one of the radial roads, which is deserted at the moment. The city seems very quiet, but perhaps that's just because there aren't many Tau here who aren't firecast. They're all busy preparing for their invasion, I reckon. We need to contact Coldwind as soon as we can and make a final survey of the battle dome to see if anything has changed. Don't try and avoid the fact you're a damned witch, I snarled at the Inquisitor. You've been messing with my head, haven't you? I wouldn't know where to start, he sneers back. What's this? Tanya asks, and the others look accusingly at Oriole, except the Colonel, who glances at me. He's a fragging psyker, that's what, I hiss, pointing at the Inquisitor. I bet he's been inside all of your heads. This is none of your concern, Oriole says sternly. You are in no position to judge me, especially you, Cage. Of everyone here, others far more worthy have done so and declared me pure and strong. Do not forget that I am an agent of the Emperor's holy orders of the Inquisition, and not answerable to the likes of you. I have gifts that are useful to my vocation, so I will use them. How do you think I knew El Savon could speak Gothic? How do you think I ensured our privacy aboard the ship? How do you think I know Coldwind was expecting us to be attacked? Or that he's been hiding something ever since we met? If it wasn't for the protection I just gave you all, we would have never got past the telepaths. I am not prepared to discuss this matter. We look at each other, then back at Oriole, defiance in our eyes. We're on a Tau world in Tau space, Tross points out. All your authority counts for nothing here. What's to stop us just walking over to the next Tau and turning you over to them? Damn, we could just be real mercenaries. How dare you consider such a thing? Barks Morik, stepping over to stand behind the colonel. Any more talk like that, soldier, and I will kill you myself. Looks like 5-3. Not too good odds, Strelly laughs coldly. 4 against 4, actually, I tell them, squaring off against Trost. I don't care much for mind fraggers like Oriole. In fact, I'd rather they were all dead. But I came here to kill an enemy of the Emperor, and that's what we're going to do. Any one of you wants to dispute that with me, they're quite welcome to step right up, right now, and give it their best shot. Any of you think you can take down Last Chance? What about you, Flyboy? Come on, demolition man. You've been wanting to do this ever since I put you on your backside the first day of training. No one moves. It's a standoff. Neither side ready to back down. We glance at each other, the tension thick enough to cut with a bayonet. It's the colonel who breaks the deadlock. We should move on, he says, looking around. If the Tau gets suspicious, we will end up dead. Remember, we are just a mercenary company, and we need to act like it. Anything out of the ordinary might get noticed, and Brightsword doesn't seem to be taking any chances. So be careful. Reminded that we're up to our necks together on this one, we grudgingly put aside our differences, warily stepping away from each other. What next, then? I ask. All the mercenaries can be found in the alien quarter, the colonel replies. Well, let's get something to eat, suggests Tanya, and then see what the locals are like. They do so much eating. They do so much eating in this book, particularly. They do a lot of eating. .540 blaze it. We find the alien quarter easily enough. It's the one with all the aliens in it. Oriole seems to know the layout of the area, and was only a few minutes' walk from the spaceport. I've never seen so many freaking things in my life, and I've been around a bit. There are tall ones, short ones, fat ones, hairy ones, spiky little guys. Things with more arms and eyes than is merely necessary for any kind of life form, and all of them living together in the same part of the city. Since we're not far from the spaceport, I guess all the off-worlders have been gathering in this place over a few years, making it a real home from home. The buildings are still Tau construction, but heavily adapted, decorated, and adorned by the local population. Banners and streamers flutter from food shop fronts. Religious looking icons on tall poles are struck into the ground in front of the other buildings. As we pass along, as we pass one in particular, there's an unpleasant charnel house smell. We look at the building and see it's daubed in savage looking alien runes, and hurry on, not wanting to know what goes on inside. Fire smoke from different types of wood fills the air, and a mix of sweet and acrid scents. There's a blend that creates a disturbing stench. And there's sand and dust everywhere as well, brown, and from the surrounding desert. And combined with the noise and smell and heat, makes me feel sick. There are market stalls selling anything and everything, from clothes to guns and grenades. We take a look at one of the arms traders, a small green guy with a scaly skin and pale yellow eyes, who deftly picks to his wares with three-fingered hands. Interested in guns, yes? He asks us as we step next to his stand. His voice is some kind of scratchy, more of a hiss than anything else. Lots of guns for brave fighters! He's right. There are lots of guns, and more of them seem to be imperial in origin. There's las guns, auto guns, a couple of bolters, some knives, a few grenades, plus what was once obviously an officer's power sword. I pick it up and read the inscription on the haft. Colonel Vinard, 21st Hadrian Guard. I tell the others, putting the sword down again. I guess he ran into some bad luck. What's this one? Quidlin asks, pointing at a bizarre pistol-shaped armament that looks like it was grown rather than built. It's green and veiny, shining slickly in the bright light. Kata pistol, you like? The store owner says, picking it up and offering it to Quidlin. He reaches for it, but Morik's hand clamps down around his wrist. You do not want to touch that, he warns the short man, dragging his arm away. It is not consecrated by the machine god. Its taint will spread to your other weapons. Best to leave it be. Ah, machine god is it? The gunrunner butts in. You humans all same. You idea that there be a machine god. You make bad weapons. You don't seem to be shy of a few, Strelly argues, indicating the assorted imperial weapons. That's because only cheap humans buy bad word like this. The dealer smiles. Proper fighters want proper weapons. I'll give you proper fighters, I snarl, taking a step towards the mercenary. Who hisses in fear. Taking a step towards the merchant, who hisses in fear and turns to scurry away. Leave him alone, last chance, the colonel says sternly, and I back off. Nobody comments that we're using our mission names again. It seems natural now that we're allowed to be soldiers once more. That's good. It was why I did it. We may be undercover here, but we're a lot more natural when it comes down to being fighters than we are being an imperial commander and his entourage. It'll hopefully make things easier than it was back on the ship and on Malek. Where's a good place to drink? Oriel asks the arms dealer, proffering a small coin delved from his pockets. 2 streets on. Look for these skulls, the green alien replies, hesitantly taking the money, glancing up at me as he does so. He points to show us the way, then impatiently waves us away. The drinking hole isn't hard to find. The dealer said, just look for the skulls. It's a small tall dome with the front of the bottom level missing, open to the street. Arranged over this is a line of speakers with skulls impaled on them, different species. I recognize human, orc, a couple of Tyranid creatures, a slender one I guess to be Eldar, plus 4 others which aren't familiar. Nice place, mutters Tanya, eyeing the skulls. We need to maintain the masquerade. If we start acting suspiciously, someone may notice. If this is where mercenaries drink, it's where we'll drink, Oriel tells us quietly before stepping onto the shade inside. There's a small counter just off the street with a burly-looking creature behind it. It's squat, its head sunk deep beneath its broad shoulders, its 3 beady eyes peering at us from beneath a heavy brow, thick-fingered alien hands beckoning us over. No weapons inside, the alien growls, standing up and dragging a crate from a pile behind it. In here till you leave. You all speak Gothic quite well, Strelly remarks, placing his las gun carefully in the crate. You humans speak nothing else, and humans are troublemakers. The security guard grunts back as we hand over our guns and knives. Nice to know we're welcome, she says sarcastically as we enter the main room. The bar is quite dark. The few red lamps around the wall do little to light the circular room. A round bar in the center, similarly lit, seems like a red island in a sea of smoky darkness. There are tables and chairs filling the rest of the space of assorted shapes and heights. Most of them are occupied. Many sets of eyes, not all of them in a regular pair, regard us as we walk in. I see more of the same species as the door warden gathered around a circular table to my right, arguing heavily with each other in guttural grunts. Most of the other aliens I don't recognize. What are they? Trost whispers to Oriole, looking over a pair of diminutive creatures swathed in rags and one of the darkest areas. Small clawed hands clasp their drinks tightly, long snouts twitching in our direction. I catch the hint of a tail whipping nervously under the table. Rud, the Inquisitor replies. Scavengers and tunnel dwellers, for the most part. You'll find them all over the galaxy, though never in large numbers. They're pretty much parasites, if you ask me. What about those? I ask next, indicating three multi-limbed creatures splayed on a bench alongside the bar. They have no heads but clusters of eye-like organs. But clusters of eye-like organs wave towards us like grass and breeze. They have no arms or legs, just a set of six tentacle limbs, which I guess must serve for both purposes. Oriole thinks for a moment before replying. I've never seen one before, but they match the description of glags, he tells me as we stop by the drinks counter. I think their world was conquered by the Tau a few centuries ago. They're not particularly warlike, as far as I remember, but not too advanced technically either. Emperor, on this holy throne, curses Tanya quietly. We all look at her with surprise as she surreptitiously nods towards the far side of the room. There, as unmistakable as my own face, sits a group of orcs. 5 of them, in fact. The burly greenskins ignoring us, concentrating instead on 2 of their number who are having some kind of contest. Born warriors, I've fought orcs on a couple of occasions and barely lived to tell the tale. They're big, tough as massive. They're big, though not massive, with powerful muscles and an ability to soak up injury and pain like nothing I've ever seen. The 2 orcs have their hands locked behind each other's thick necks and are grunting to each other in their crude language. It's like they're counting or something. When they reach 3, they smash their heads together with a crack I can hear across the room. They all burst into laughter, grabbing jugs of thick-looking drink from the table and taking large swigs. Weak or strong drink? Says the bartender, dragging our attention away from the headbutting contest. The owner is a gangly alien with blue skin and no fat at all, just wily sinews and taut muscle. Its face is pretty much one big mouth, with a single vertical slit for a nose and tiny white eyes. Oriole replies in some gibberish language that sounds like coughs and sputters, gesturing for us to sit down at the nearby table. He joined us after a short conversation with the barkeep. We can have rooms here on the upper level, he tells us. I don't want to stay on the shuttle if we have to go through a mind screen every time we go in and out of the spaceport. Where did you learn to talk like that? Trost asks, looking at the bartender. Oriole just gives him a patronizing look, but Trost still doesn't get it. He's an inquisitor, Tanya explains slowly, keeping her voice low. Trost gives a grunt, not entirely satisfied, and slouches further back in his chair. The alien barmen bring us our drinks. 8 large glasses of frothing blackness. I take a cautious sip first, the others waiting to see if I drop dead on the spot. I give them the all clear sign with a grin. It's just like ale, really, I tell them, taking another mouthful. It's actually quite refreshing after the heat outside. The others start on their drinks, Quinlan giving an appreciative nod, Strelly drinking half of his in one long draught. Hey, I say to the others when I realize what just happened, how come I become the official food tester? Why doesn't one of you eat or drink something before me for a change? Because if you die, we don't have to change the mission plan, Strelly points out. All of us have specific jobs to do. You're just hanging around to provide a bit of firepower. I'm about to give him an angry reply, but stop short. He's got a point. We have a flyboy, a demolition man, sharpshooter, brains. I'm just last chance. All I do is survive. So what do we do between now and the mission? Tanya asks, wiping some froth from her top lip. Keep quiet and don't attract any attention. Strictly low profile activity, Oriel answers, toying with his glass. This is the part that has the greatest chance of going wrong. I don't know how Coldwind is going to contact me. I don't know when Brightsword is going to do his inspection, or if he's done it already and left. I don't know exactly how tight security is going to be while he's back. The last thing we need is any trouble, so keep your lips tight and your eyes and ears open. With this in mind, we hunker down to try to look the other way as the orcs leave their table and stride past. They dart us a few glances, joking with each other in their own guttural language, but nothing else happens. I breathe a bit easier knowing that they've left. You said the Tau conquered these glag things? Asks Tanya, looking over the blobby aliens. Conquered is not really the right word, Orly replies thoughtfully. Coerce them is a bit better. You see, the Tau Va, the greater good, isn't really a religious thing just for them. They believe it's a common destiny across the galaxy and includes everyone. The Tau would much rather prefer other alien races as allies, or really servants, to be honest, than enemies. You see, they're not fighting a war against anyone really, but there's lots of races in the way that they need to deal with. Sending an invasion fleet seems to be an odd way of not fighting a war, says Strelly, and I nod in agreement. Well, for a start, that's Brightsword being overzealous, countered Oriel, taking another sip of his drink. We sometimes have the same problem with Imperial commanders, taking it on themselves to fight with some other world, which we don't need to fight just yet. Unlike the Tau, we can remove them without worrying that it damages our beliefs. After all, the Emperor is infallible, not his servants. So that includes inquisitors? Trost asks slyly. Oriel glares at him. We're talking about the Tau, though, not mankind. The Tau arrive at your world with a fleet, tanks, attack craft, fire warriors, and battle suits, and they ask if you want to join in their quest to achieve the greater good. Well, that's the way I think it happens with the Glags. The Glags were clever enough to say yes, but there are some records that show what happens to those worlds that say no. Sooner or later, they either say yes, with their cities burning and their soldiers rotting in their open graves, or no position to say anything at all. I guess there must be a lot of resentment then, all those conquered races. The Tau obviously in charge, not everyone's going to be happy with that, suggests Quidlin, looking around the tavern. Unfortunately, that isn't usually the case, Oriel replies with a shake of his head. The Tau are very magnanimous in victory. Those races that become a part of the Tau Empire aren't slaves, although they certainly aren't in charge either, as you say. The Tau find out what they are able to do, and then put them to good use. They don't always colonize the worlds they've conquered either. Sometimes they just want to remove a strategic threat. And you've probably noticed that they favor very hot, dry worlds, and there's usually not much competition in that regard. Until they ran into mankind, adds the colonel. We can live on the Tau worlds just as well as they can, and occasionally the explorators will investigate a world with the same time a Tau colony fleet arrives. It does not always end in bloodshed, but frequently does. I'm about to add something when Morik's looks distracts me. I have my back to the door, sitting opposite him, and turn around to see what he is staring at. There's a small group at the door, humanoid in shape, talking with the guard. What's up? I ask the ex-commissar. Traitors, he says grimly, nodding back towards the outside. I look again and see the newcomers are humans. As they enter, I can make them out better. Like us, they're wearing an assortment of different colors. Some of them obviously alien made, and each of them wears a band of white, either as a bandana, armband, or around their waists. I've seen their kind before, professional mercenaries who will sell to the highest bidder, regardless of what they look like or who they have to fight. I fought against them, and I fought alongside them, and I didn't like it either way. They give us nods as they walk past us into the bar, but there's an angry murmuring to our left. Looking that way, I see a group of Taurelians walking in our direction. I saw Taurelians on Epsian Octarius, well, their corpses at least. Narrow waisted and broad shoulders, the Taurelians are a bit shorter than most people, with long canine faces, which is why we call them dog soldiers. There's six of them, and they growl at each other menacingly. One of them steps forward from the group and snarls something at us in Toleran. We look at Oriole, who shrugs and looks over at the bartender, saying something in the language he used earlier. The barkeep joins us, replying quickly, and then at the door, Oriole says something back, and the owner shakes his head. The Terrellians say we have to leave. They don't like us drinking here, Oriole translates. I heard him, says one of the mercenaries, who stopped next to our table and are glaring at the Terrellians. He makes a kind of barking noise at the aliens, adding emphasis by tapping himself on the chest. This doesn't please the Terrellians, who snarl and bark something back. Oh, frag this, I say, getting on my feet and walking over to the Terrellian leader. I hear Oriole call my name, but ignore him. The aliens gather around me, snapping their jaws, but I ignore the rest and focus on the spokesman. If you want to be able to ever drink again, leave now, I'd say to the soldier, smiling. He looks over at the bartender, who gives a quick translation. The Terrellian peers up at me, showing his long teeth. One way or another, these Terrellians have got a real problem with us, and I don't figure on them letting us just walk out of here. If I remember my legends correctly, we virus bombed a few of their worlds back when the Emperor was leading the Great Crusade. Guess they still haven't gotten over that after 10,000 years. The Terrellian is snarling something to the barkeep, still, jabbing a clawed finger into my chest as he does so. By the Emperor, this is the slowest starting brawl I've ever been in. And it's a while since I had a good fight, so I ball my fist and smash the stupid alien straight across the jaw, knocking him backwards into the table. One for the Emperor, I spit, spinning on the spot, and driving my boot in the stomach of another dog soldier. As the Trallians jump on me, the other last chancers pile in, as well as the human mercenaries. The rest of the bar seems against us, though. It's all manner of things crawl and jump out of the darkness. A Trallian tries to grab my throat, but I sway back out of his reach. As it takes a step forward, I take a stride as well, driving my knee into its ribs. I get into a headlock, but something hits me in the back of my neck, causing me to lose my grip. Turning, I see one of the glags launch itself at me, flailing with its limbs at my face. I react just in time, grabbing it in mid-jump and spinning, hurling it across the room. A Terralian tries to take my head off with a chair, but I duck, seeing Morik hurling something into the dog soldiers across the bar counter. Grinning like a fool, I drive my elbow into the Terralian's face and kick the chair out of its hands. It lunges at me, jaw snapping, and I jump to one side, rolling across the table. I land on my feet on the other side. Just as the glag recovers and propels itself towards me, I snatch up a stool and swing it, connecting heavily across the back of my head. What? I snatch up a stool and swing it, connecting heavily with the glag and sending it hurtling back again. A glass crashes across the back of my head, stunning me for a second. A green scaled alien with a frog face and long arms swings at me, backhanding me across the chest and knocking the breath out of my lungs. I block the next attack with my arm, grabbing the thing's wrist and tossing it over my hip onto the table. I drive my fist towards its face, but it rolls out of the way, and my knuckles crash painfully onto the unvarnished wood. A Terralian kicks a chair at me, which I jump over. Landing awkwardly as I bang my hip against the table, the Terralian snarls something and tries to grab my throat, but I bat its hand away and step back. It makes another lunge and I duck, spinning on my heel to deliver a sweeping kick to the Terralian's right knee and knocking it from its feet. There's no time to follow up, though, as the frog face is back on its feet, webbed hands grabbing my arm and swinging me into an upturned bench, crashing me onto the ground. I kick out hard, feeling my boot connect with something soft, and the creature staggers back, howling like mad. I take the quick break and I take the quick break in fighting to look around. Morik is bashing a Talarian repeatedly against the wall, a glag lashed onto his back, trying to wrap its tentacles around his throat. I see the colonel deliver a neck-breaking punch to another greenie, smashing it into a backflip. Oriole is struggling with another Talarian. He has its neck in a lock and is trying to smash its head against the bar. Tanya and a spiny-headed thing roll across the floor, each other's throats in their hands. I can't see Trost or Strelly. The press of bodies is too tight. One of the mercenaries is clubbing a Terralian on the floor with a stool, shouting something I can't understand. A second is draped over the table, blood dribbling from a cut on its forehead. The two Hud are standing in the shadows, hissing at each other in their strange language and pointing in my direction. It's then I realize just how outnumbered we are. It's pretty much us against the whole bar. The Terralian on the floor springs to its feet and charges me, driving its shoulder into my gut and slamming us both to the ground. I defend myself with my arms as it flails at my head with its fists, and then headbutt it on the end of the snout, causing the dog soldier to recoil in pain. I drive my fist to its face, cracking it just below the right eye, forcing it far enough to give me space to get back on my feet. Something lands in the bar, screeching like a bird of prey. Crouched on the counter, I can see that it's a long-limbed and rangy. I can see that it's long-limbed and rangy. Its skin is a greenish-gray hue, patterned with body paint and zigzags and jagged lines. It doesn't appear to be wearing clothes as such, just a tight harness with various pouches and trinkets attached. Its face is bead-like and orange, and red spines splay angrily from the back of its head. It puts its head back and shrieks across the bar, a piercing noise, which causes everyone to pause for a moment. Unleashing the power of its whipcord muscles, the alien pounces a good 5 meters across the room, landing on the back of the creature strangling Tanya. More of them appear, bounding swiftly from table to table, their long arms swinging as they join the fight. Their speed is amazing, and the way they hurl themselves around, you'd think they were built out of springs. One leaps long and high, rebounding off the wall and spearing into a Talarian. I see the first one wind up for a punch, its long arms swinging around in a wide arc before catching another Talarian full across the head and hurling it across the air to crash down through a table. I redouble my efforts, grabbing the face of one of the scaly green things and driving my knee into its gut, and then again into its chest, dropping the frog thing to the floor with a thud. I sprint across the bar, picking up the splintered remnants of a chair and bringing it full force into one of the one of the Terralians, smashing it clear of the human mercenary. The others are fighting, back hard as well. Put off by our surprise reinforcements, the, the Tyrellians and the other aliens back off, heading for the door. Some of them stop on the threshold and turn to face us, calling out taunts and jibes in whatever language they're speaking. The quill-headed aliens all put their heads back and begin screeching, the sound filling the room and deafening to hear, putting the others to flight. I stand there panting, leaning on my knees, and one of the aliens walks over to me in a low, stoop. Well, that was fun, I say to myself, standing straight and meeting the gaze of the approaching creature. Yes, it was, it replies to my amazement, in strangely good Gothic for something that looks so feral. But there's no profit in it.